Hundreds of different stories we report in any given year is a tricky business. History doesn't happen in neat, bite-sized chunks. But when you put together all sorts of seemingly unconnected stories, it is sometimes possible to see some common themes emerging and to get some hints at how the world may be changing. Take the demonstrations against animal exports back in January. The usual renter mob, or maybe a sign of something different. Ordinary folk prepared to stand up and be counted for what they believe in. Perhaps in 1995, there was a growing belief that they could make a difference. People's politics, if you like. This is what people's politics looks like in action. These people were demonstrating on behalf of animals. This was said to be Middle England making its presence felt.
I think it's absolutely disgusting. If only they would kill them in this country, that we would be happy with. But live export, no, it's too cruel.
I think it's disgusting. We ought to be ashamed to call ourselves a member of the human race while we allow things like that to go on.
Pictures like these had hit home. Calves born in Britain to live their short lives in French veal crates. The French weren't exactly sensitive to Middle England's concerns. They just didn't understand why so many here cared so much about animals. On the 1st of February, Jill Phipps gave her life to the cause. Crushed under the wheels of a truck she was trying to stop. Her death was an inspiration to many. Police used to dealing with the old breed of protesters found this lot hard to cope with. They tried the old tactics, riot police, with predictable results.
I've just given the police the most severe tongue lashing they've ever had. I had to point out to them they cannot govern without the consent of the people of this country, and they have lost the consent of the people here.
I think the government and Mr Major should do something about it now, because this county is going to become ungovernable if they're not careful.
Another example here of people's politics. Protesters took to the trees to try to stop road builders cutting down Stanworth Woods in Lancashire to build the M65.
You stupid man! It's dangerous! Are you a copper or what?
I'm a Blackburn ratepayer, please, for me, an ordinary Blackburn ratepayer.
For our children's future too, this is what this is about.
Do you not
We're actually trying to save the environment, which the DOT are rubbish.
They lost this battle, but later the government made massive cuts to its road building programme, mostly to save money, but also to appease the environmentalists. In summer, Greenpeace activists went into action over the old Brent Spar oil rig. Shell was towing it out to sea to sink it in a deep trench in the North Atlantic. Greenpeace wanted to stop them. Using their own cameras, they fed David and Goliath-type pictures to the world. Public support was what they wanted, and they got it. Greenpeace people managed to board the rig. They figured if they could stay on it, Shell couldn't sink it.
There's two people going into the raft. Two people going into the raft.
The world's media were there, vital players in this particular game.
The world will be watching your actions and judging you by it.
Their coverage led to a boycott of Shell garages, but the company stood firm and they threw the protesters off the rig. Round one to Shell. And they had the government's full support.
Many people seem deeply upset about the decision to dispose of Brent Spar in deep sea water. I have to say to the right honourable gentleman that I believe it is the right way to dispose of Brent Spar in deep water.
But Mr Major was in for a shock. Shell caved in and said they wouldn't sink the rig after all. Round 2 to Greenpeace. The government was livid.
I don't think they should have taken this decision. I think they had persuaded the British government of what they believed to be right. It's taken them 3 years to check all the arguments and come to that conclusion. And I think they've given in under pressure, and I don't believe that that is the right thing for a major British company to do.
Greenpeace was ecstatic, but it proved to be a Pyrrhic victory. Even as the Brent Spar was being towed back from the Atlantic, the world discovered that Greenpeace had been wrong all along. The rig would not have contaminated the ocean as they'd claimed, and there was a letter from Greenpeace to Shell admitting as much. So to this day, the Brent Spar sits in a Norwegian fjord, and no one's quite sure what to do with her. Round 3, nobody won.
We live in a media world here where vociferous minorities can actually hold a multinational company to ransom. And the media is all-powerful. Unless they act properly, unless they look at the consequences of their actions beforehand, we're going to see much more of this happening.
And we did. The French villains again.
There's only one way we can get Jacques Chirac to stop his nuclear testing program in the South Pacific. And that's to hit him where it really hurts. Drop a bomb on Chirac's plans. Boycott French wine.
We're now going at full speed.
Greenpeace went into action again, this time in the South Pacific. They tried to land on Mururoa Atoll. They thought if they could, the French wouldn't be able to test their nuclear weapons. And again the world joined in their protests, trying to shame President Chirac into calling off the tests with all manner of tactics.
Citizens of the world to the Chirac! Hello!
In the South Pacific it got nasty. Thousands of Tahitians took to the streets. There was full-scale rioting. But the French weren't deterred. Chirac unleashed his hard men, the same gang who'd blown up a Greenpeace ship 10 years ago. They showed no mercy to this lot.
They're obviously trying to bang open the door handle. There's something coming through the door. No, they're going to put tear gas in. Yeah, they just put tear gas. There's 2 frigates and 4 5... No! Stop it! Stop it!
You're scared. Keep going, lads. Okay, we get the doors open? No. Get out! Tear gas! 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
And the tests went ahead.
1, 2, and...
To date, the French have conducted 4 tests. So, by the end of the year, what had the people's politics achieved? The tests were carried out, cars are still being exported, and there will be more Brent Spars. But, at the very least, the world took note. Kobe, Japan, January the 17th, the worst earthquake the country had seen for 70 years. 5,000 victims. In September, nature reminded us of her fury again, a spectacular volcanic eruption in New Zealand. The weather went crazy this year, from Florida to the Philippines. Many experts say the climate's changing, global warming, and this is the price we're paying. floods in Europe were blamed on warmer weather too, melting the snow in the Alps. Much of northern Europe was a lake. And we had our fair share of it too. But by the summer, what had happened to it all? A few dry months and there were reservoirs looking like dust bowls. And the rain stayed away. And the water companies got it in the neck. They'd only just been privatized and people blamed them for the water shortages. Not enough investment to stop the leaks. They blamed the drought. But it was lovely if you liked it. The third hottest summer since records began. Welcome to Costa Britain. By the end of the year, scientists were agreeing that we'll see many more summers like this last one. Has global warming finally arrived?
Let me whisper in your ear, say the words you long to hear. Beep, 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 yeah. Places I remember all my life, though some have changed. You're asking me, will my love grow? I don't know. Images of broken light which dance before me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. All you need is love. All you need is love. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah.
In life are free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. I want money. That's what I want.
It sounded like monopoly money when Nick Leeson gambled Barings Bank on how he thought the markets would behave. He was wrong, and he fiddled the figures to conceal his losses. £860 million. In February, he was rumbled. He'd broken the bank and disappeared from Singapore. The police caught up with him in Frankfurt Airport. It took a while to get used to the idea that one man could wreak such havoc and call into question the security of the world's financial markets. Had capitalism gone mad? By the end of the year, Leeson was back in Singapore, pleading guilty to cheating. He was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison, much more than he'd expected. Back in London, Barings did survive, sort of, bought for £1 by a huge Dutch bank. So did most of the bosses. At the end of the year, they got bonuses worth a total of £20 million.
when you get down to the road.
It was a good year for the bosses, if not for their image. They did so well, everyone started calling them fat cats. Many awarded themselves hefty hikes in their salaries, leaving the workers way behind. It was the bosses of the privatised utilities who really got people worked up, huge rewards for running what were sometimes monopolies. Cedric Brown caught it in the neck at the British Gas AGM in March. This was filmed secretly by a shareholder. Shareholders were furious because of the boss's pay rises when many jobs had been cut and the company wasn't doing very well.
We, in front of us, Mr. Chairman, have assembled the largest collection of AR souls you're ever likely to meet.
Come on, Cedric, show us how you gobble this block load up. Come on.
Cedric Brown was ridiculed and the whole idea of a new share-owning democracy was being called into question.
With his nose in the trough again.
Mr. Major admitted he was concerned at the way some of the utilities bosses had done so well for themselves.
Those windfall gains were far larger than they should have been. Now that's happened. The horse has got out of that particular stable. But I think we need to look at it for the future. The Greenbury Committee will, if necessary, will take action.
A committee was set up under the boss of Marks & Spencer, Sir Richard Greenbury, to look at how much senior executives in public companies should be paid and perhaps draw up a new code of practice. But who was on the committee? Why, big bosses, of course, and there was a fuss about that.
How can the public have any faith in this? All you've done, all that has happened here, is the fat cats have been put in charge of the creamery.
Money, money, money.
The people on the committee all manage extremely successful companies, are paid extremely well, but I don't see us as fat cats as some members of the press have declared us.
It's a rich man's world.
The committee delivered a mild slap on the wrist to some of the utility bosses. They might have paid themselves too much unintentionally and thought perhaps they'd choose to give a little back.
Does anyone in the House believe that those guilty of these abuses of private monopoly power are going to confess? Are they likely to reduce their salaries and their share options? It beggars belief.
Money makes the world go around, the bird go around, the bird go around.
The government has no intention of introducing a top people's pay policy. We do not begrudge top salaries for top performance.
In truth, Greenbury hadn't changed much. In October, Burger King paid one of their departing bosses £900,000, which looked a tad over the top compared with some workers getting less than £1 an hour. By the end of the year, the company had been forced into paying some compensation. The Labour Party made hay of it all and of a Rowntree report which said the poorest in Britain were getting poorer and the rich richer.
Direct from the BBC Television Centre in London, it's the 49th National Lottery, live.
The lottery cashed in on everyone wanting to get rich. It raised a fortune and a furore. Although millions have gone to good causes, the critics asked, where does it come from? Mostly the least well-off. Many charities said they suffered because of it. There was criticism of the profits made by the operators Camelot and of the way the so-called good causes were selected. £13 million went to buy Winston Churchill's private papers, outrageous according to many. But that was a pittance compared to what the Royal Opera House got. £50 million was their handout, and there were those who wanted more.
They've been given too little, unfortunately, because they can't do everything that they want to do with 50 million.
Take it now.
140 lottery players were turned overnight into millionaires. And many small causes were awarded handouts they desperately needed. Britain, it seems, does want the lottery, but maybe wishes it had all been handled a little differently. How we love talking about money, especially about people with more than us, whether it's Cedric Brown or the lottery winners. Or perhaps I should say, how we love arguing about it. They don't come much more disputatious than us British. But there were long spells in 1995 when we put the arguments and the divisions behind us and remembered.
It gives me very great pleasure to inaugurate the 50th anniversary of VE Day.
If ever there was a year for commemorations, it was this one.
The parade commander, Mr. Max Ballard, Royal British Legion.
50 years after the end of the Second World War, the last great anniversary for so many who fought and suffered for us all. And we showed our gratitude as a nation united.
Will later be presented to Her Majesty the Queen Mother and the Princess Margaret.
We've been treated wherever we go with the greatest courtesy. I feel like a god, honestly.
Brilliant, that's all I can say, brilliant. And nostalgia, well, this won't happen again, will it, ever? I mean, this is the end of the road, really.
If you see a Royal Marine, he's your brother. Wherever you are, wherever he's been, you know, that's the family.
This is your victory. It is the victory of the cause of freedom in every land.
Here was the true horror of war, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, destroyed by atom bombs. That ended the war in the Pacific, and in August, 50 years on, Japan's Prime Minister apologized for the way his country had behaved in it.
私は未来に過ちながらしめんとするがゆえに、疑うべきもないこの歴史の事実を謙虚に受け止め、ここに改めて痛切な反省の意を表し、心からのお詫びの気持ちを表明いたします。
In many ways, the VJ Day commemorations were the most emotional of the year. This had been the forgotten army, men and women who'd fought in a terrible war on the other side of the world, many of whom had received no thanks for it. This was their thanks at last. So what has the world learned since the last Great War? Not a lot. No more world wars maybe, but plenty on a smaller scale. And yet 1995 did hold out some hope on the peace front. The search for a permanent peace in Northern Ireland went on, given a nudge by President Clinton. And it was American pressure that finally brought the prospect of peace in Bosnia too. It was not a good year for the United Nations, whose responsibility that was meant to be. In New York, the UN celebrated its 50th anniversary, but out in the real world, in the Balkans, for instance, its shortcomings were there for all to see. 1995 saw probably the worst example in its history of UN humiliation and impotence. In May, Bosnian Serbs took over 300 UN peacekeepers hostage as revenge for attacks by NATO. They were chained to any possible military targets to prevent more NATO attacks. But if the international community thought this was as bad as it got, they were wrong. In July, the Bosnian Serbs stormed Srebrenica. Bosnian Muslims had fled there because it was meant to be a UN safe haven. It wasn't. Pictures of the atrocities were slow to emerge, and when they did, the world was outraged. The Serb commander Ratko Mladic was there, seeming to coordinate the ethnic cleansing of the town. The women were separated from their menfolk. It was rumored that thousands of those men separated off were heading to their deaths, that they were massacred and buried in mass graves. As thousands of women made their way to reception camps in Tuzla, anecdotal evidence of atrocities began to accumulate.
We have had allegations from people coming out from Srebrenica to Tuzla, the women and children, of 5,000 to 6,000 people missing. Where are those people?
To this day, we don't know the answer to that. So far, 5,000 men are thought to have got out. As many as 3,000 are still missing. On the 25th of July, Radovan Karadzic and Ratko Mladic were formally charged with genocide and crimes against humanity. The Serbs had taken Krajina earlier in the war. Now they lost it again to the returning Croats. It was overrun in just 3 days. The Serb defense collapsed.
Nevjerojatno, jako su se utvrdili, ali razbusali smo ih ko stare kante.
Thus were the Balkans being divided. The leaders of Serbia and Croatia had made a deal. In Bosnia, neither Muslims nor Bosnian Serbs wanted it to happen, but their country was effectively being split in two. Now the Americans really started to flex their muscles. The UN had failed. They'd been trying to keep the peace where there was no peace to keep, so it was time for NATO to take over. On the 28th of August, the Bosnian Serbs fired a mortar into the center of Sarajevo, another safe haven, killing 37 men, women and children. It was one atrocity too far. NATO warplanes flew 750 bombing sorties to deliver their message, and they dropped more than 1,000 bombs. The Bosnian Serbs complained it was not UN peacekeeping, but NATO war-making. There were NATO casualties.
I think this is moral disaster for the West and for the NATO nations. They have created a precedent that may endanger world peace and that may trigger Third World War.
But getting tough American style was working.
The presidents of Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia have made a historic and heroic choice.
There were some in Sarajevo who celebrated, but many found it hard to believe that peace might come, and some were positively hostile to it.
Mislim da smo zaslužili da Sarajevo bude naše I Sarajevo uvijek bilo naše I ostaće naše, a za koju godinu mi ćemo se naoružati pa ćemo I otirati brda.
In truth, the negotiators hadn't been allowed to fail. The Bosnian Serb leaders weren't even in Paris when the agreement was finally signed in December. They'd have been arrested, and they didn't like it. But they had no choice, strong-armed as they were by the president of Serbia. The Bosnian president didn't like it either, but accepted the inevitable.
Monsieur Alija Izetbegović, président de la République de Bosnie-Herzégovine.
Naš narod I naš parlament prihvatili su taj ugovor. Učinili su to bez oduševljenja, poput čovjeka koji ispija koristan, ali gorak lijek.
My first daddy died in the Troubles. It was the saddest day of my life. I still think of him. Now it is nice and peaceful. I like having peace and quiet for a change. instead of people shooting and killing. My Christmas wish is that peace and love will last in Ireland forever.
Catherine Hamill won many hearts with that, including President Clinton's. He was in Northern Ireland, welcomed by Protestant and Catholic alike. He'd come to help push forward the peace process in the doldrums for so long. He'd already met Gerry Adams in Washington, but this was the first meeting recorded on film.
Mrs. Clifton, how does it feel to be in Belfast?
Oh, we're delighted to be here.
End of the rope, Tony.
Just got shaking his hand, but I was proud to do so. He's very nice.
Were you impressed?
Very impressed, yes. It was lovely.
And this was his message.
You must say to those who still would use violence for political objectives, you are the past. Your day is over. Violence has no place at the table of democracy and no role in the future of this land. By the same token, you must also be willing to say to those who renounce violence and who do take their own risks for peace that they are entitled to be full participants in the democratic process.
Many thought that last comment was directed at John Major to dig the peace process out of the sand. The year had started well enough, with Prime Ministers Major and Bruton unveiling the framework document in February, outlining plans for all-party talks. But in spite of the smiles and handshakes, there were fundamental questions that hadn't been dealt with. A real obstacle was to emerge: the IRA's weapons. London said there could be no real talks involving Sinn Féin until they gave up at least some of them. For the IRA, that was tantamount to surrender. Dublin said what really mattered was keeping the peace process moving. There may have been a ceasefire for almost a year, but the ancient hostilities were still there, and they boiled over in the marching season. The Protestants had wanted to take one route, the Catholics didn't like it. There was a general feeling of frustration surrounding the peace process.
I and my colleagues and others were always able to see some way out of the crisis. I do not now see a way out of this crisis.
Yeah.
In the autumn, a summit meeting between London and Dublin had been cancelled, and the Irish Prime Minister didn't try to conceal his frustration. It had taken President Clinton's visit to knock heads together. Late at night, hours before Clinton was due in London, Mr. Bruton flew in, and he and Mr. Major held a news conference. A deal of sorts had been done.
Can I first this evening thank the Taoiseach and his colleagues for coming over here at such short notice to launch the Twin Track initiative.
That initiative means moving towards all-party talks without waiting for decommissioning. The new international body is meant to take care of that. Mr. Bruton said he and Mr. Major had agreed to differ so that agreement could be reached.
I'm very pleased that we are able this evening to launch the Twin Track process. This is a process designed to lead, by the end of February, to all-party negotiations in Northern Ireland.
Here in Northern Ireland, you are making a miracle.
A miracle? Well, hardly that. The Commission on Disarmament was at least sitting, and the ceasefire had held. But by the end of the year, the IRA was still insisting that they would not hand over a single bullet, and the basic problem remained. For most of us, happily, the only conflict we experience directly is on the sports field or watching it happen on the box as armchair warriors. Mind you, there were times in '95 when sporting conflict took on a whole new meaning.
Oh, what's going on here? Catanar's getting involved with some supporters. Oh, this is outrageous.
Gladly walk across the desert
would swim out to save you in your sea of broken dreams. When all your hopes are sinking.
It's obviously a very difficult situation for Paul.
Oh, it's a tough act to follow, but he's done it again. I don't believe it.
Bruno must be a mile ahead on points, and he must have been the world heavyweight champion with that.
And new
Bruno is the champion.
It's another good shout. He's done it. Dominic Cork has a hat-trick.
But he came out to defend the title. I hope he's not done himself damage.
Caught violation, verbal abuse, point penalty, Mr. Sandro.
That's it.
I have this afternoon tendered my resignation as leader of the Conservative Party to Sir Marcus Fox, the chairman of the 1922 committee, and requested him to set the machinery in motion for the election of a successor.
Mr. Major had been forced into the biggest gamble of his political career. He'd been having a terrible time of it since the beginning of the year, attacked at every turn by his own MPs in a party divided over Europe. He tried to restore unity, but failed.
It was fudged at the referendum, it was fudged at the single European...
They kept up the pressure and wouldn't accept the blame.
We are not Guy Fawkes, and we never intended to blow the Conservative Party apart.
But blow it apart they did, and for Mr. Major the blows kept on coming, not just from the backbenchers, but from the voters as well. The Tories failed to win a single council in the Scottish local election.
934 votes.
It's not so much disunity as they feel there's a lack of consultation. Many of the membership and the ordinary Conservative voters, certainly in the doorsteps, feel that everything seems to be going wrong.
They don't see any leadership, they see indecisiveness, they're ineffectual.
Then in May, the local elections in England and Wales brought another beating for the Tories. They ended up controlling fewer councils than ever before. Now the hounds were really baying for Mr. Major's blood, and his back was to the wall as it had never been before.
For those people who may suggest, as some have, that at the moment the Conservative Party has its backs to the wall, I would simply say we will do precisely what the British nation has done all through its history when it had its back to the wall. That was turn round and fight for the things it believes in.
It was the old enemy, his own Eurosceptical MPs, who delivered the final blow. They gave him a torrid time at a meeting in the House, and it was clear that he had to do something drastic. His loyal supporters went into overdrive.
I remember last year, all the way through, there was talk of leadership elections, of leadership challenges. It didn't happen, and it won't.
It would be very clear from every part of the party is that the one way in which you don't make any improvement at all is to go in for some sort of leadership quarrel. That really would not be sensible.
But a month later,
I have this afternoon tendered my resignation as leader of the Conservative Party.
so this was the moment of truth. Who, if anyone, would wield a dagger and stand against the leader? There were several possibles.
Yes or no, would you stand against him?
Yes or no, would I stand against him? Next week is when these decisions will be taken, isn't it?
Norman Lamont wasn't biting. Theresa Gorman was tempted.
If people wished me to stand, I would stand.
But she didn't have to. They found a heavyweight, the Cabinet Minister John Redwood.
I telephoned the Prime Minister this morning and told him I would be resigning.
What the journalists really wanted to know was, did he have a sense of humour? After all, he was nicknamed Mr. Spock after the character from Star Trek.
I can now see the joke. Although, as you know, it took me quite a long time to work it out. But the logic cells have now managed to get round to it, and I now realise that it was quite funny all along.
Now battle was truly joined for the heart and soul, or at least the votes, of the Conservative Parliamentary Party.
Try this lot.
Lovely. Thank you. Good to see you.
What do the next few days hold for you?
Nice weather. Test match next week.
And the sun kept smiling on him.
For John Major, 218. For John Redwood, 89. Abstained, 8. Spoiled, 12. I declare John Major elected.
I believe that has put to rest any question and any speculation about the leadership of the Conservative Party up to and beyond the next general election.
Well, perhaps. Michael Heseltine was now Deputy Prime Minister and loyal to a fault. The young pretender Michael Portillo had been moved out of harm's way as Defence Secretary. The party seemed more united than it had for many a long day. But that did precious little to restore the Tories' popularity. If the polls were to be believed, the voters were looking elsewhere. Labour was having a good year.
Young Labour, New Labour.
They're voting very positively for the new Labour Party.
They know we have changed, they know we have changed for the better, they know our bad days are behind us and our better days are ahead. Heavens above, parties have got to change continually.
Tony Blair did have some challenges to head off. He wanted to persuade us that old Labour had become new Labour. And the first step was to get rid of the old Clause 4. The old guard in his party was outraged.
We've got the Tories on the run. I mean, what is this all about? Is there a hidden agenda?
He might have thought so, but the party voted overwhelmingly to dump the past and embrace new Labour. There was a new ruthlessness about the party, a new will to win. At the Littleborough and Saddleworth by-election, Mr Blair's friend Peter Mandelson was taking no prisoners. There was a personal attack on the Liberal Democrats candidate. But in spite of everything, Paddy Ashdown's party did what it's been doing so successfully for so long now. It won the by-election. Mr Blair's style of leadership was beginning to draw flack from sections of the party.
It seems to me that Tony's ignoring the grassroots of the Labour Party, the people who are members of the Labour Party, the people who decide what policies should be and should not be.
But Blair was tough on his critics and tough on the causes of criticism. In April, he sacked 2 members of his shadow cabinet, Anne Clwyd and Jim Cousins, for missing an important vote in the House. And at the end of the summer, he dealt with 2 troublesome elements in the party. Dave Church and his Walsall supporters were slung out, And Liz Davis was barred from standing as a parliamentary candidate, even though she'd been chosen by the constituency, Leeds North East. As Mr. Blair squashed the left, he moved the party to the right. His shadow Home Secretary sounded off about beggars and squeegee merchants and upset no end of people. His shadow Chancellor decreed that the unemployed would have their benefit cut if they refused to join one of Labour's work schemes.
This is my genuine belief that rights in a modern society must be matched by responsibility.
Tax was the real battleground. It had cost Labour the last election, and they didn't want that to happen again. And instead of tax rises, they talked of tax cuts. They were stealing the Tories' clothes.
The centre-right of politics is our ground, and there's no way a squatter like him will be able to rest upon it.
About turn!
The Tories did their best to ridicule Labour, hopping from left to right and right again. But by the time another Queen's speech came around on the 15th of November, it was clear that Mr. Blair was a long way ahead. The real test, of course, the general election, is still to come. It doesn't have to be held until early in the summer of '97. But with by-elections whittling away at the government's tiny majority and the strains of 16 years in office, well, don't bet on that date. The popular sound of '95 was British and brash. It was Brit-pop. Bands like Blur, Pulp and Oasis battled it out for chart supremacy. And in August, that battle of the bands turned nasty, with Oasis and Blur fighting for the #1 spot. Blur, art college boys from the South, won that competition. Penguin celebrated their 60-year anniversary in 1995 by selling books for 60 pence. It caught on. The old price-fixing arrangement, the net book agreement, came to an end after 40 years. That meant cheaper books, but the worry was fewer bookshops. Poetry became fashionable. We had National Poetry Day, and Seamus Heaney, the people's choice for once, won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Now he must hold his hand like a branch out in the sun and rain for weeks, until the young are hatched and fledged and flown.
Hugely popular that was. But not this. Damien Hirst cut animals in half and pickled them and won prizes for it. All this actress did was lie down in a glass box. That too, it seemed, is art. Riverdance moved about a lot, if only the bottom half of their bodies, and surprised everyone by becoming one of the great successes of the year. Britain's architects voted this the building of the year, Huddersfield Town Football Stadium. The Reichstag, the German parliament building, was wrapped up by the Bulgarian artist Christo. The Germans loved it. 3 million of them went to see it.
I never said that anyway.
And here the soaps kept pulling in vast audiences. The two biggest had anniversaries this year. Coronation Street, 35 years old.
I bet she jumped at the offer though, didn't she?
And EastEnders, a youngster at 10. Sharon Watts, Michelle and Arthur Fowler left Albert Square, and not a dry eye in the living room as Bette Gilroy left the street.
Easy when you know how.
This is the CBS Evening News.
For almost the whole of 1995, the United States was obsessed by the O.J. Simpson trial. He wasn't alone in the dock. The very notion of American justice was on trial, and race was never far away.
Not only did we play the race card, we dealt it from the bottom of the deck.
Most of Britain was hooked on this disturbing drama. O.J. was not the only person to become a household name by virtue of the courtroom camera. It was circus and soap opera combined.
It's astonishing what we've sunk to here.
And when it came to the back...
Excuse me, Mr. Bailey. Stand up and speak when it's your turn.
Somebody played with this evidence.
Judge Lance Ito enjoyed his fame and was ridiculed for turning justice into showbiz.
Those who say the criminal justice system itself is on trial may be correct in that observation.
As it turned out, this man became one of the biggest stars, Detective Mark Furman. He had been responsible for searching the murder scene, and it was he who'd found the evidence that was meant to convict O.J. The bloody gloves were supposed to be the key to it all, but when O.J. tried them on in a typical piece of courtroom theatre, they didn't fit. The defense said Furman was a racist, and he'd been trying to frame O.J.
You say on your oath that you have not addressed any black person as a nigger or spoken about black people as niggers in the past 10 years, Detective Furman.
That's what I'm saying, sir.
But when tapes were produced with Furman's voice clearly uttering the so-called N-word, they proved he was lying.
When I left, Dana goes, "No blood, Mark." "No problem. Not even any marks, Dana. Just body shards. You ever try to find a bruise on a nigger? Pretty tough, huh?"
Detective Furman, was the testimony that you gave at the preliminary hearing in this case completely truthful?
I wish to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Have you ever falsified a police report?
I wish to assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
Detective Furman, did you plant or manufacture any evidence in this case?
I assert my Fifth Amendment privilege.
This man, this scourge, became one of the worst people in the history of this world, Adolf Hitler.
The defense lawyer Johnny Cochran compared Furman to Hitler, blatantly playing to the largely black jury.
Racism. Furman was to take all black people and burn them or bomb them. That's genocidal racism. Is that ethnic purity? What is that? What is that? We're paying this man's salary.
He's not in there.
The whole of America waited for the verdict.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury?
It didn't take long. After 9 months in court, the jury was out for only 4 hours.
The jury in the above entitled action find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
The verdict divided America.
Oh, my word.
Juice is free. The juice is free.
I didn't think he did it in the first place. I felt a conspiracy. It just shows that the system can work.
You know, I'm not surprised, but it's just so upsetting. I mean, there isn't a person that I talked to who didn't feel that he was guilty.
There is no justice. I've totally lost all. I mean, this town, it seems like because of who he is, he just got away with murder.
The trial of the year in Britain was that of Rosemary West, accused of murdering 10 young women and girls. What a contrast between this and California. Crayons in court instead of cameras. The evidence in the case was so shocking, much of it simply went unreported by television and radio. West had claimed her husband, Fred, had committed the murders alone and without her knowledge. The jury did not believe her.
There was no sign of emotion, no sign of contrition, as the jury slowly and methodically delivered the 7 guilty verdicts which placed Mrs. West high in the league of the most horrific mass killers.
When it was all over, there was concern expressed because it emerged that some of the witnesses at the trial had been paid by journalists for their stories. The law may now be changed because of that. But few believed the outcome of the trial had been affected, and Rosemary West will spend the rest of her life in jail. Evil comes in so many different forms. The Wests committed their horrors in dark secrecy. But when terrorists go into action, they want the world to see and to be shocked. In 1995, they succeeded, especially when they attacked their own people, from Oklahoma to Israel. Americans and Israelis were horrified to discover that the enemy within could wreak such devastation. The funeral on November the 6th of Yitzhak Rabin, warrior turned peacemaker. Murdered by one of his own. Why? Because they felt the price he was prepared to pay for peace with the Arabs was too great. The extreme right-wing Jewish groups had fought against Rabin's policy of giving the Palestinians land for peace. This land was promised to the Jews by God, they believed. Rabin defied them. And he defied extremist Palestinians attacking from the opposite side. 47 Israelis were killed in terrorist attacks in '95. A determined suicide bomber is impossible to stop. Other Palestinians used their bare hands to tear down Jewish settlements built on their land. But through it all, Rabin pursued peace. He shook hands with the old enemy at a ceremony in Washington. On the evening he died, he'd been speaking before 100,000 Israelis at a rally. They were there to show that they wanted peace in their land. But in that huge crowd, there was one young man who did not. Rabin joined in the song for peace. A few minutes later, he was lying fatally injured. The young man had struck. Not an Arab, a Jew, Yigal Amir. He was arrested immediately. He said God had told him to kill the Prime Minister and he'd been planning the murder for a year. The people of Israel could scarcely believe what had happened.
It's a tragic day for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel, for our neighbors, for the peace process.
Rabin was a great man. And he had walked a lonely road.
I am very sad and very shocked for this awful and terrible crime.
Many of Arafat's people reacted very differently. With joy, they regarded Rabin as a terrorist and killer of Palestinian martyrs. And there were many Jews, too, who celebrated his death. They, truly, were the enemy within.
משיירת מלאכי שמיים שמלווים אותך עכשיו, אני מבקשת שישמרו עליך ושישמרו עליך טוב, כי אתה ראוי למשמר שכזה. אנחנו אוהבים אותך סבא תמיד.
המשמר יעבור לדום, משמר דום.
Chemical warfare on the streets of Tokyo. Sarin gas, 500 times more deadly than cyanide, had been released into the subway system in the morning rush hour, the ultimate urban nightmare. 5,500 people were horribly affected, convulsions, foaming at the mouth, vomiting. 12 died. There were 4 gas attacks altogether. Mercifully, 2 failed.
匂いですか？それともどんな？匂いは何もなかったですよ。息苦しくて息が吸えないような感じでした。
The enemy within was the Aum Shinrikyo sect. That stands for Supreme Truth. Its leader, Shoko Asahara. Om is a doomsday sect. It believes all civilization will be destroyed in 1997, except Asahara and his followers. Police found enough sarin gas on the sect's premises to kill 10 million people, and documents showing they were trying to buy biological and nuclear weapons too. Post-war Japan has seen many strange cults arise and thrive, but none more deadly than this. Its leader is now on trial for mass murder. Oklahoma City, April the 19th.
We've got a couple of buildings where all the floors are pancakes, so we have victims trapped. We're not sure exactly how many.
I don't know if a bomb went off or if they just had an explosion or what, but there's got to be fatalities over there. There's just no way out of that.
The whole building shook, and then everything just started crashing down on top of you, and you just kind of hit the floor and waited till it all stopped, and then tried to find all your friends.
All my friends are missing. I don't know where any of them are.
Billy was right in it, and my mom's in there.
Panic in Oklahoma, fear across the United States. Terrorists had attacked America's heartland with devastating results. Their country was no longer immune. Now, nowhere was safe from the terrorist bombs. There were over 30 children in a daycare center in the building. 15 of them died. In all, 168 people died.
Because of this guy, I might have lost my 3-year-old daughter and my husband and my 4-year-old. So whoever did this, I hope you're happy.
At first, foreigners were blamed, wrongly. The bomber was Timothy McVeigh, an American. The shock was immense. McVeigh had been brought up in Pendleton, an all-American boy in an all-American home. He'd fought for his country and been honored by it. The enemy within, in every sense.
Ready on the firing line, you may commence firing.
McVeigh was associated with a right-wing militia group called the Michigan Militia. Suddenly, Americans became aware of groups like these across the country. They share a passion for weapons and a hatred of authority. Many feel they're at war with the government itself.
Bill Clinton is a traitor. He has sold out the American people. He has violated the oath of his office. He has trashed the Constitution. He has done everything to weaken this country instead of making it stronger.
They have a right to keep and bear arms. They have a right to put on uniforms and go out on the weekends. They do not have the right to kill innocent Americans. They do not have the right to violate the law, and they do not have the right to take the position that if somebody comes to arrest them for violating the law, they're perfectly justified in killing them.
Amazing grace.
A poll taken even as the dead were being buried showed that 45% of all Americans believe the government does indeed pose a threat to their constitutional rights. The Oklahoma bomb had ripped apart more than just a building.
The fact that one of our own countrymen within our country has done this has, I think, added to the total disaster in our minds of what has happened.
I guess now it's time for me to give up. I feel it's time. Got a picture of you beside me. Got your lipstick mark still on your coffee cup. Oh, yeah. Got a fist of your emotion.
Before I go, for all you people at home, I must just say it once.
shut that door.
Whatever I did, I didn't mean it. I just want you back for good. Want you back. Want you back. Whatever I want, just tell me the song and I'll sing it. You'll be right and understood. Want you back. Want you back. I want you back for good.
The boss wasn't going to have any music. I said, I'll need something to come on with. He said, I'll get you a walking stick.
Have you seen that bloody Leonardo da Vinci cartoon? No. I couldn't see the bloody joke.
I am a man more sinned against than sinning. Celebrated glory, but that was not.
Yes, I suppose we have got rather fond of one another. In a way.
In a way, yes.
We're like a terrorist and his hostage.
Which one of you is a terrorist?
Whatever I said, whatever I did, I didn't mean it. I just
And it's all done in the best possible time.
Lord Hume has been invited to form a government.
Could we be together, sir? I can do.
I hope I'll be remembered as one who kept the country together, kept the country united. I wish I could have been Prime Minister in happier times and easier times.
Hugh Grant and Liz Hurley, the perfect couple. Glamorous, successful, the media loved them, and they loved it. Until the night that Mr. Grant was found by the police in Los Angeles performing a lewd act with a prostitute.
I didn't really ever think it would be quite the kind of circus it's become, but I can see there's juice in it. I completely understand everyone having a good joke about it. If I was a single guy, then it would be hysterical, I'm sure by now. But it's pretty miserable on the other side of the equation.
You can see his point, but the media loved it. Now the couple was even more famous. Media intrusion, this? Or could it be that somebody had tipped off the snappers and the scribblers? After all, there's no such thing as bad publicity, is there? Bob Geldof seemed truly upset when his marriage with Paula Yates ended very publicly. She just happened to be publicising her book at the time. An autobiography, as it happens. Another of Liz Taylor's marriages ended. She's almost into double figures by now, but not quite. It was Ken and Em's first marriage, Lovey-Dom's favourite couple, a couple no more. And could this be the next fairy tale wedding? The prince and the PR girl. She spoke of her love for a polo-playing major. Had she been unfaithful with him?
Yes, I adored him. Yes, I was in love with him.
That interview hit the royal family like a 10-ton bomb. Within a month, the Queen had written to both Charles and Diana telling them they should get divorced. But by the end of the year, there were still many questions unanswered. When would the divorce happen? What role would Diana eventually fulfill? And would we ever feel quite the same about the royal family? The nation was truly divided on that one. Something else to sew into the patchwork of events that make up a year's news stories. Another story that hasn't finished with the end of the year.
You can see that programme again on Sunday afternoon here on BBC One at 1:30.
Was the wrong man convicted?
The Power of Forensic Science. Traces of Guilt, next Thursday, 9 o'clock, BBC Two.